Good morning. Welcome to the Seraph September 2025 Automotive Manufacturing Industry Report. I'm Ambrose Conroy, and I'm joined by
Justin Fortier. I'm the Director of Research here at Seraph.
We're looking forward to having a great conversation this morning with you around different issues that we're seeing within the automotive manufacturing industry, how things are going. We're going to look at tariffs, we're going to look at talent, and we're going to look at technology as we have for the last several reports. And we want to understand what's going on in these uncertain times and what you can do as manufacturers, as industrial companies to move forward. We base this report on a lot of data that we pull from industry, and we send out an industry leader survey. If you're joining this report and you're not getting that survey, please reach out, send us a note, send me a note and ask, and we'll include you on the list of people that is able to participate on that. We've got about 125 people that respond regularly. We're trying to grow that. The more people we have, the better view of data that we'll have moving forward. A lot of you have come up and asked us at different events what Seraph does. You know we do this report. Some of you don't actually know that we're an operational strategy firm focused on execution. We really do a lot of roll up the sleeves type projects for clients. We deliver value. We focus on speed of execution. We're driving operational excellence in everything that we do. I think of us very much as a rapid industrialization firm. We're great at getting involved, helping to get your plants to where they should be, helping to get your supply chains to where they should be, moving operations, transferring operations, fixing the regional issues around tariffs, making sure that you're ready to run. We've got proven leaders, deep functional expertise, a robust toolkit in the Seraph operating system, and we're very results driven. Our team looks at KPIs, we measure what we're doing, and we're able to understand that we're getting the right value and results for each of our clients. We've got a great track record. Plenty of referenceable projects. Many of you know us very well from the work that we do. Thank you very much for joining this report. Let's get into the data. So a key part of what we do in this survey is we send out an auto leader survey. Many of you get the survey. Many of you complete it. Thank you to everyone who has completed the survey. It's really helpful for all of us to see what people are viewing, because sometimes we get different opinions from people. Things that we saw right now that stuck out to me, the tariffs are still a massive issue. Tariff recovery is an even bigger issue. Suppliers that I spoke to and data from the survey said the OEMs are being slow to pay them back. They've got tariff claims in, but there seems to be a significant amount of delay in getting those reimbursed. We're also hearing volume concerns, especially from Stellantis. Suppliers that we talk to are really concerned that volumes remain low, and it's mixed. So different platforms, different OEMs are having different challenges.
It's no surprise for many of you that the top issue, both for the suppliers we've surveyed and the OEMs we've surveyed, that tariffs and trade policy really ended up at the top of everybody's list this quarter. And so we're going to look at some of the impacts of that, but we're starting to see OEMs and their suppliers make real commitments and real changes after reacting to the big news in April and a lot of the uncertainty and changes that followed. But now we're starting to see deals come out, whether it's a framework with Europe, and leaders are now making real commitments to change their supply chain in order to mitigate some of these high costs that are disrupting the global supply chain.
And Justin, we're seeing a lot of regionalization. People are looking at moving things. So USMCA is getting a big surge of companies investigating moving here. We're seeing power supply constraints in Mexico. We're seeing labor constraints in Mexico. There are reports saying the U.S. lost manufacturing jobs. I've seen those reports, and I'm going to say I just don't believe it. Every client that I've talked to, every firm that we're working with, seems to be actively hiring some positions. I think there have been some right sizing in certain areas, but across manufacturing, there is a skill shortage that remains, and we're not seeing that deep 50,000 job loss, or I don't see the 50,000 job loss that was reported. I just don't see it. And it's outside of automotive as well. It's in defense, it's in medical device, it's in aerospace. So we've got multiple manufacturing industries hiring in this country. If they can just find the people, they're hiring. Now wages are staying steady, but they're hiring people. So that's one piece with trade and tariff policy. The demand outlook here that we're seeing, though, that's another thing. Consumers really seem shocked by what's going on. Prices are high, vehicles are staying on the road longer, and we're just not seeing the demand there from a consumer perspective.
And we'll look in some of the underlying data behind that. And one other thing that I wanted to call out, this was not from our survey, but we took a look at public data available, basically the mentions in earnings calls, investment bank analysis reports, news, and we looked for matching key terms around reshoring or supply chain reorganization or relocation. And then we also looked within that same 50 words in whatever document, was there a mention of announcement or commitment, basically anything that is going to indicate that companies are seriously moving towards this. Of course, we've seen a big increase in discussion of tariffs, but we want to look for action-oriented words that we could start to establish a benchmark. And if we look in the last 90 days, we've seen a 33% change. And if you look compared to where we were at in September 2024, you could see it was almost non-existent. So there's been a steady build over this year, really culminating in Q2. And we expect to see more as Q3 earnings come around and companies share the progress of the plans they're executing now.
Justin, the 2020s have really been the decade of supply chain, and none of us thought that would be the case. We had COVID-19, which really sent everyone for a recovery surge when that cleared. Now we've got this, we had the chip crisis. We've had lots of different problems that have stressed supply chains, and I'm hearing talk of other geopolitical events coming up. There seems to be a real focus right now, and it's great to see the action starting. We're hearing this from clients that we're talking to. We're seeing people looking at moving supply out of China specifically. I think world events with India taking part in military exercises in Belarus with Russia, we're going to see more pressure on India as well. So those companies that have pivoted from China to India may be in for a world of hurt in the next week or two. But we'll just have to wait and see. I think this is turbulent. But the one thing we're seeing, the one effective supply chain strategy right now seems to be moving to the region where you're going to sell the part. So USMCA for the USMCA region or the United States, and the Eurozone for Europe. And other regions seem to be less susceptible to tariffs, but they're still out there.
One interesting trend that we've been following as we dig into the publicly available OEM and supplier financial data is that prior to COVID, suppliers had much stronger EBIT margins than OEMs. And then following COVID, when we had constrained supply and OEMs were really able to raise prices through a very inflationary time period and constrain how much of that they were paying out to suppliers, OEMs had a much higher profitability during that period. But then in recent quarters, that's flipped now again. And suppliers are back performing slightly better on profitability terms than OEMs. Now, some of this is from the supply chain negotiations that working itself out as suppliers were able to ask more. And now we're starting to see the impacts of OEMs being weighed down by decreased sales as some of their vehicles haven't moved as quickly, but we're also seeing the impact of the new OEMs that are still not yet at profitability as they're trying to bring their EV programs up. And then also OEMs, established OEMs that are trying to get their EV programs up or their powertrain mix right, they're still underperforming because of that. So now OEMs are on average less profitable than suppliers on a margin basis.
And Justin, what I find interesting here is in China or Asia, we're seeing a lot more pressure on price, and prices seem to be coming down. When I look at this and I see margins improving in Asia, but I see margins falling significantly in Europe and North America. It gives me some pause, and I'm trying to understand. I've been trying to understand why. It's just an interesting dynamic. All the Chinese brands that are selling globally are reducing prices, and we're seeing a squeeze in Europe, which I understand because of the tariffs on European vehicles coming into the North American market. But that doesn't answer the question for me in terms of why the North American numbers are down so much. I don't think the data gives us the answers at this point in time, but there's a lot to think about, and I think we'll know more next quarter as this shakes out.
Yeah, and one thing we like to do is invite you, if you have questions about our data or our process of how we got to these numbers, to set up a time to chat with us, and we can help really get exactly what you need out of some of the research we've done. But as a little bit of context behind the numbers we are looking at now, we choose to separate and segment by where the companies are headquartered. And I think almost all automotive companies would consider themselves global in nature. So the way we've divided it here is these are European headquartered OEMs. So North America is going to be weighed down by Lucid and Rivian as well. But in terms of the supplier picture, there is not as many new suppliers as OEMs. So you're not going to have the same ramp up and wide variance.
But Justin, what we're seeing here is the publicly traded suppliers. These are the larger, more financially viable suppliers that have better access to the credit markets. And they've always done a bit better. The thing that I'm seeing is some of the smaller suppliers seem to be showing more signs of distress right now. And we're seeing some really strange behavior from some of the smaller suppliers at this point in time. We've even seen some strange behavior from a couple of OEMs. I've seen some desourcings that have happened in the last 6 weeks that don't really make a lot of sense. So there's some strange behavior that I haven't seen in the past, and I'm trying to begin to understand. Are the OEMs realizing that they have to reduce their supply base and concentrate supply, or is there something else going on right now? And we see the financial health of the larger suppliers, but we're not seeing a good picture here for the smaller suppliers that are generally the weaker ones, but are the places where we get innovation, are the ones that can really drive some things. They're the diverse suppliers. They're the ones that can really help to fill the gaps. So we need them. We need every supplier in order to build a vehicle. So new vehicle sales are returning to a much more normal level. We're close to, or seasonally adjusted, just about 16 million in the U.S., which is a sustainable number. The industry can survive on that. Suppliers can do well on that. It's not where we were. We're not back to peak auto, but I think we're at a good level there. In the EU, we're doing okay as well. We're about 1 million monthly vehicles right now. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's not annually adjusted.
No, that's okay. Monthly.
In the EU, we're doing well. We're also about 1 million monthly vehicles right now. So we're seeing levels that are sustainable moving forward. The challenge comes from the mix, and we're seeing in the EU a significant number of Chinese imports coming in and starting to take out the lower end of the market. These are vehicles that are priced much more competitively, and they're filling this gap. Western OEMs have been very focused on achieving profit, selling larger cars, and it really has opened an opportunity, much like it did for the Japanese and the Koreans in decades past, to step in and capture market share.
All right. Yeah, I think getting on this one, we want to talk about
introduced. So we're seeing inventories down about 12%, which is great. We're getting to healthier numbers. We're getting to normalized inventory for the most part. The thing that really strikes me is the 34% increase in price since 2029. So getting up to almost $49,000 is really something that gives me pause. Cars aren't affordable, and what we're doing by pushing the initial purchase price for new vehicles up that high, is we are opening the door for some lower end vehicles to come in. I know that there are some, but very few, lower priced vehicles available right now. My concern is that that gap will be filled. There is a need, there is demand for lower priced cars. And the Chinese have, if they can find a way to get plants set up in the US and find USMCA compliant components, an opportunity here to launch some of their lower priced vehicles.
And one trend that pairs with the challenge of affordability is that a lot of OEMs have looked to build international low-cost supply chains in order to build those. One interesting approach I got to see this summer was Slate Auto, which is a new startup that is trying to...
Here in Michigan, I might add.
Yeah, here in Troy, Michigan, where Ambrose and I are right now. That they're using composites for the exterior so they could save money on tooling in order to launch a plant faster, and they're really reducing all customization at the factory level. I think the only customization they decided to offer was the battery size. They designed it with modularity in mind to be able to launch a truck that is dramatically cheaper than anything else that's on the market. So that is probably the most interesting approach I've seen to creating a true competitor to some of these low-cost Chinese vehicles.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens when it comes out. I think you can have a Slate any color you want as long as it's gray.
Yes, and they're doing they've got some vinyl wraps that
that
will be part of it.
You can change it from a truck to an SUV. You can put a cover on the top. You can put you can do a lot of different things with it. It looks like a fun vehicle. I put in a reservation for one, so we'll see if they come out. I really want to touch it and feel.
Yeah, I got to see a couple in person, which was nice at the Reindustrialized conference here in Detroit.
Were they as impressive as they look online?
Yeah, they looked great. So, but simple, not.
Simple's good. We need simple.
Yeah, one of the only things that they have in there is AC, and that's it.
I guess you need AC.
Yeah, I think that was the one compromise they decided to do. So, as we look at vehicle affordability, is mostly being driven, the improvements, by increases in wages. Vehicles have mostly been flat, as we just showed on the previous slide.
My concern here is just that vehicles aren't affordable, and I know we'll touch on it, but the average age of used vehicles continues to creep up, and it's something we really need to look at and understand. I ask this every time we do one of these reports, but are we building in more quality than consumers want? That's something I think we need to think about. Are we over-engineering vehicles at this point in time? And maybe it's not more quality than they want, but maybe it's more quality than they can afford. Maybe we need to go back to the point where you really wanted to replace the vehicle every 8 to 9 years. I think the industry needs that, and consumers might be willing to accept that. They did for a long time. So as I said, Chinese OEMs really seem to have an opening here, and we're seeing them capitalize on that opening. In China, Chinese OEMs have displaced Western automakers there. They've learned, they've perfected, they've implemented at speed, they've adapted, and become much closer to consumer electronic products, listening to their customers, evolving and adapting quickly. And that's resulted in a massive market share gain. We're up 69% in China versus Western OEMs. So there's a huge shift right now that's happened. Asia in general, we're not seeing that same shift. In the home market, they've displaced everyone. In Asia, they've got about a 4% market share gain, which is still pretty significant. Western Europe, we're seeing a gain, but also not quite as much, but 6%. Chinese automakers are coming in and they're taking 6% of the market. That to me shows that there is a lower cost car that's needed. Vehicles need to be priced more competitively, and by shifting to higher priced vehicles, Western OEMs have opened that door to the Chinese. In Mexico, we're seeing they gained much more market share earlier in the year. It's coming down, but it's still at a pretty significant level, 9% total market share. We've seen the backlash start now. Von der Leyen is talking about putting in increased tariffs on Chinese cars coming in. And in Mexico, Sheinbaum is very focused on it. We saw a 50% tariff. So these tariffs are coming. It's not just the U.S., it's globally. People are seeing the threat from these Chinese automakers who have gained huge competitive advantage by not having all the capex that was required to build legacy models and not having legacy costs. So we've got a landscape that has shifted and is now shifting back, and the tariffs are the barrier. But they won't keep Chinese OEMs out for long. We're going to see them starting to build plants. We're already seeing it in Eastern Europe. So be ready, be aware. We need to innovate, and we need to figure out a way to fill that low-cost gap that's out there. It's not just going to be used cars. People want new cars. People want some technological advances. OEMs have to get ready, and they have to position themselves. And expectations are pretty clear from the auto market that people are coming to terms with tariffs. They expect them to be here for a while. We still see people hoping, and I'm going to use the word hope, that tariffs will be canceled, that they'll be paused, that they'll be clawed back. Even with the appeals court ruling, I don't expect tariffs to go away. I expect the Supreme Court will either find a way to let tariffs stand without expanding presidential authority, or if they rule against the tariffs, they'll delay getting rid of them long enough for Congress to take action and put tariffs in place. The revenue that is being collected by the federal government in the United States from tariffs is just too big. Conversations that I've had with suppliers and with OEMs, there's a lot of frustration around tariffs. We know that some OEMs are doing everything they can to focus on moving goods out of China. I expect with geopolitical events that are going on this week, President Modi sending forces to Belarus to participate in a joint exercise with Russia and Belarus, we could see those tariffs go from 50% to higher on India. But China and India seem to be places where everyone's pausing and trying to ask the question of, does it make sense to source here? Tariffs are being absorbed by many OEMs at this point in time, although it's taking a long time for them to reimburse suppliers. Tier 2 and other lower tier suppliers generally expect to pass the tariffs on to the Tier 1s. So the Tier 1s, as almost always happened, are caught in a squeeze where they're having to pay and pick up the tariff burdens for their suppliers, and they're, in some cases, able to pass those on to the OEMs. And even when they should be able to pass them on, even when the OEMs accept it, we're seeing the payment terms stretch out, we're seeing delays, we're seeing discussions. So it's not working as smoothly as anyone would like, and there's a lot of risk here that we're seeing within the supply base. Financial strains are real, and there's only so much the suppliers can absorb at this point in time. For that matter, there's only so much some of the OEMs can absorb as well. So we really need to figure it out. We need to have a good tariff strategy. But the one thing that seems to be clear is consumers are not ready at this point in time to pick up the tariff bill. So from a CAFE perspective, we're seeing Trump wanting to get rid of all environmental regulation, it seems. And I think that will change things pretty radically. Something that we're hearing out of Washington is there's a drumbeat that's going increasingly loud that we're gearing up towards some sort of a conflict in 2027. If that rings true, if that continues, if those drums beat louder, then I think there's going to be even less focus on CAFE, on environmental regulations. We know CARB in California has suffered some setbacks. We know the EPA is working on changing some rules and regulations. And it's clear that President Trump really wants people to function in a much freer, less regulatory environment. I don't think we're going to see much in terms of increasing environmental regs here, and I think that it's something that people should not be too focused on. If you're counting on regulation to drive products, to drive programs that you have, you need to take a good hard look at what you're investing and make sure that your customers are going to be supporting that regardless of what regulatory changes occur. So when we look at commercial activities, this is something that we're seeing. Supply chain restructuring, plant consolidation or relocations, i.e. footprint strategy execution, and then organizational restructuring are three of the top things that came out in our survey. Supply chain has been such a focus since COVID. We live in a world where supply chain used to be something that was an afterthought, and supply chain officers focusing on supply chain, even the work that we do around supply chain, has become board level activity. It's front and center. People want to know. Footprint strategies are something we're talking about more and more right now. My belief is that we have to be manufacturing in the region where we're going to sell the product. If you're in USMCA selling product, you need to be manufacturing in USMCA. I'd love to say in the United States, but this is a region and we need to just focus on being in the region. USMCA is up for review. We think things may change there, but that's got to go through a process. Right now, the USMCA provisions are there. It's clear. Let's wait and see what's going to happen. When you're looking at your footprint strategy, you want to make sure that you're taking all of that into account. People are moving. We're seeing different things happening. And when we're seeing people moving into Mexico, we're seeing labor constraints. So one of the things we always talk about is talent. It's hard to get the right talent in many areas of Mexico. We're also still seeing challenges where some supplier parks are having power issues. Upgrading the grid with all the AI spend, with all the AI draw, with all the electrification that happened is way behind. And I don't know how many of you have talked to companies that manufacture transformers or manufacture switchgear or other high voltage products that support our grid. But if you want to do an upgrade, if you want to do something, we're looking at 3 to 5 years to get those products right now if you place an order. So even though the utilities want to improve, they just can't do it. So if we look at operational activities, there's a lot of commercial pessimism out there, and companies are relying on operational excellence to rapidly deliver transformational level of change. And we're seeing there are benefits that can be achieved from operational efforts. Reducing logistics costs is definitely one. We've seen some success with those things coming down. We've seen inventory costs come down, and mostly through creative measures. So people are using free trade zones. A company we know, Lucerne International, Mary over there, went through the effort, got her company certified as a free trade zone, and is helping others to go out. It's one of these great stories of the industry coming together. She's helping others get product into that free trade zone to improve their cash flow. People are doing consigned inventory. There are other levers that can be pulled there. We're also seeing some gains from your standard operational excellence efforts. People are automating processes, they're reducing labor, they're increasing machine efficiency. I'm seeing a renewed effort on something that I grew up with. People are starting to value stream map not only the manufacturing process, but other business processes. They're starting to really look at how do we get process efficiency more broadly. And we're looking at how can we take costs out throughout the enterprise. Doing this quickly, doing it in a focused way can really help to drive some different things. Downtime, poor quality, value engineering, all of those things are key. It's a really challenging time, and we need to be pulling all of the operational effort, all of the operational levers. It's a really challenging time, and we need to be pulling all of the operational levers that we can right now to drive outsized transformation as quickly as we can. Speed is important and effort is important, but we need the results and we need to drive value. So we've posted a bunch on LinkedIn already about AI, and AI is such a hot trend right now. So we decided we'd want to ask about that. We wanted to survey leaders in the automotive industry, operations people, and understand how is AI impacting operational efficiency.
I don't think the answers were surprising yet. And just before Ambrose explains some of what our takeaways were, I think it's important to just help define some of the terms that we are using. For agentic, we defined it as AI taking action independently, basically a series of actions, workflows that are replacing existing workflows operated by humans. And as you see, that's a pretty small group.
What we found here is that AI is really driving some white collar efficiency. It's not hitting the shop floor. We've got some regulations coming in to put guardrails around it. In the EU, we've got the EU AI Act coming into place. We know that when you put AI in an organization, you have to make sure that your model is not public. You have to make sure that your data is available. Your data has to be clean, it has to be ready to use, and you have to be ready to go. Clients that have used it have found it works some of the time, but it's not enough to make these massive investments that we're seeing. There was an MIT study that said 95% of clients using it, 95% of companies using it are not seeing value. And about $40 billion, $40 billion with a B dollars have been spent on AI projects so far. So it seems to be working for AI meeting notes. I love it for that. You can get action items out, you can get meeting notes out, but it's not perfect. You've got errors. You've got the ability to read, write, and summarize information very quickly. It's great with helping with reports. And I wish I was back in college because this would have made all the work that I did so much easier. Quality and inspection, data and planning, we can do a lot more data analysis very, very quickly. And I've talked to some coders and we're seeing some coding efficiency, but it's not always right. AI is based on probability models. It gives you what it thinks the next answer might be using probability, not actually thinking. So we need to make sure that we've set the foundation right, that things are in the right place and we're ready to go. If you really want to talk about AI, we're happy to have a conversation. I had 5 people working on AI over the summer. We learned a ton, and we're using it in our business. There are a lot of things that you can do very cost effectively to increase productivity on the white collar side. It's not ready for prime time in my experience on the shop floor yet, but I think in the next few years we'll get there.
One of the key takeaways that we've had right now is that in terms of overall priority, if we think back to the beginning of this call where we went over the priorities, labor has fallen down. At the height of scaling up following the constraints in COVID, labor was the number one issue, and it's cyclical. That will return, and we know there are a lot of leaders that are concerned about the talent that is in that band that's approaching retirement. One of the questions we asked in our leader survey was about where they expect AI and machine learning to impact their hiring needs. And so it's probably unsurprising that we see that skilled trades and technicians, they're not expecting AI to be able to replace those roles. But one interesting case study you can look at, and I think it's probably too early to determine the success, is a startup, Hadrian. It's now a late stage. They're opening their second large factory, but their whole premise is pairing skilled machinists with software engineers in order to digitize a lot of those skills that are going away. Even though our survey respondents aren't thinking that AI is going to impact the hiring needs, and I think that's probably correct, that it's not going to make you need to hire less, but that pool is going to continue to shrink in the United States. And with the reshoring movement that the administration is trying to create, the demand for those skills are only going to go up. So finding ways to amplify those skills could be really interesting going forward.
So Justin, I see potential here, but I just don't see it coming to fruition yet. I think it's much like other AI efforts. So from EVs to AVs, I think that autonomous vehicles are something that, to me, really highlight the best use case for AI. AVs represent a fabulous use case for AI. Waymo, Zoox, Tesla all have AI capabilities out there. They're all out driving in different markets. I've been lucky enough to be in a Waymo. I've been lucky enough to sit in a Zoox, and I've got a Tesla with its own full self-driving supervised package on it. So I get to experience that as well. And they all have pluses and minuses. Driving through San Francisco in a Waymo was a really incredible experience. It was game-changing. Sitting in a Zoox with that amazing large window-like door next to it is fantastic. Tesla because I'm sitting behind the wheel, it doesn't feel so much like it. I imagine it feels much like a Super Cruise was. You're sitting there, the car is driving you, and it does a great job navigating out of the driveway to the destination, making all the turns, stopping all the stops, signs, navigating the stoplights, and you're very aware of what's going on because ready to take over at any point in time. But it's going to be a huge market. And there was a study that I saw that when you have an autonomous vehicle, it can work far more. So you can get a 16-hour day easily out of an autonomous vehicle, whereas if you have a driver for an Uber, you're getting a much shorter day out of them. It enables more rides to happen. It enables better utilization of the underlying asset. When individuals own the assets and they're providing a service, it's much less impactful. But the likes of Uber are still paying for that vehicle's capital cost. And if Uber or Zoox or Tesla can get the cost of the capital for that vehicle down, they can drive down the price of rides, and that will really have a spiking effect in terms of adoption. So we see huge potential here. And while we don't see it having a transformational impact this year or next, it's coming. I think this could hockey stick faster, but we all just have to wait and see. There's huge incentives to make this happen. As Zoox gets out there, as Waymo deploys to more cities, as Tesla expands beyond the Austin market, I think there's a great opportunity here. And the safety data is the other thing that I'm finding very interesting here. So there's a huge increase in safety data coming out of ride sharing. So 88% fewer serious injuries or crashes occurred in ride sharing vehicles. If you think about the cost of fixing vehicles, if you think about your insurance, if you reduce that by that much, almost a 90% reduction, that's fantastic versus the human benchmark. As we get more autonomy, there's going to be even further pressure from insurance companies and from other stakeholders to get these out there. The stats are fantastic. The reduction in injury, the reduction in repair costs is great. So I think we're going to see the economics shift in favor of AVs over human drivers in EVs or other modes of transportation fairly quickly. I'm looking forward to being able to get a Waymo more often when I want one. They're not all that available right now, but as they deploy more and more, it's a really exciting market.
And just as we talked about trying to apply AI in your operation, applying AI to your vehicle is really the same thing. You need to be able to have the right substrate, the right foundations in order to benefit from that trend. So whether that's a supplier that is positioned to support it or an OEM that truly has the right capability, even if your autonomy efforts are not even close to as mature as Waymo or Zoox or Tesla, getting the foundation right could open up the possibility for future partnerships. And that's one thing that we're excited about. Ambrose, maybe you could talk about. We're going to offer a webinar early next month that if you'd like to pre-register.
So software-defined vehicles are really becoming an incredibly important thing. There's an investment in Rivian by Volkswagen of $5 billion. There's a huge focus again on software-defined vehicles. It's great that over-the-air updates come out, recalls can be done over the air, tremendous changes can happen that way. I think software-defined vehicles now are completely changing the landscape, and the software is almost becoming another powertrain for the car. The operating system will be as important as the powertrain. We'll get the invitation out to everyone on this webinar soon. Please let us know if there's anything specific you are interested in around software-defined vehicles, but we're looking forward to having that conversation. We've got some questions here in the chat. Bob, so strange behavior. We've seen a couple of suppliers who were recently desourced, and these are suppliers who are financially healthy, delivering on time, and the OEM still pulled supply from them and moved it somewhere else. It's not behavior that we've seen in the past, but we've looked at some of the smaller
suppliers, and they're much less financially strong than the larger suppliers. That, to me, is a new trend. It's something that's concerning, and it's something that we don't want to see. Paula, your question, I think that's a great question. Is it possible that suppliers in the EU and US are just trying to win business now rather than hitting a margin hurdle? Um, we're seeing some of that, but that's a very slippery slope, as we all know. You can cover some of your costs. You need to make sure that you've got enough volume, baseload volume into your operations to continue. But we need to be protective of that margin. The Chinese suppliers that are coming in, there's a lot of, call it, free capital behind a lot of suppliers that are out there. We're seeing some of that come in and being very disruptive. However, it's not what we're looking to see. I think there has been some reactionary, we just need to survive behavior, but that seems to be changing. We're seeing rationality starting to return. People have realized that it's time to start working again. The chaos that we saw from the tariffs seems to be easing, and companies are taking action to make sure they're able to deliver in the future. John, your comment on median income, I think, is key. When you've got an average car price of 49,000 and a median income in the United States of 40,000, and lower in a lot of the rest of the world, it's hard. And I think that does open the door for lower priced vehicles. I think Slate has a very interesting offering. Others that are in that $25,000 or less range are key. With vehicles staying on the road for 14 years, used car prices staying stable, high, we need to see some lower cost entrants. We'll wait, we'll see. I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, and just on context, if you're mentioning that, I believe that's because we're comparing. This one is about median, and if you're looking at the previous slide, here we're talking about average new vehicle transaction price. So that's why it's a little higher, because I think most automakers have skewed towards larger and luxury. I wish I had a third L to go after that, but that's the pattern we're seeing. So the median new vehicle is a little bit smaller than the average in this case.
Good point, Justin.
And I think there was one comment that other people, we had a screen lagging issue earlier on, so I'm not even sure that this slide showed properly, but Jeff had asked about if we've included OEMs that are new in this, and yes, we have. We've all these include new OEMs, but I think that's a good question to ask, because I'm sure if you're working for a supplier and you're thinking about whether it's upcoming negotiations or understanding the financial position of your largest customers is really helpful. One thing we do in preparation of this is listen to the earnings calls of different OEMs. Sometimes we just read them because there's a lot of them. But if you're at a supplier and you're going into one of these discussions that's going to be challenging, it is helpful to get the perspective of your customer, or vice versa. If you're an OEM and you're trying to understand what your supplier is going through and how they're trying to position to support you through what's going to be a challenging time.
And Justin, this is one of the areas where I actually find AI tools like ChatGPT to be very helpful, because you can task it with going out and scouring all of the earnings calls, all of the financial updates that are put out from the OEMs, and it will come back and it will answer specific questions and pull data. You need to read the data with a critical eye. You need to make sure the sources are right, but it's a much faster way to go out and collect some of that data so that you can move forward in an intelligent, data-driven manner.
Yeah, I'm going to just scan through LinkedIn here and see if there are a few more questions. We've got a little bit more time before we wrap up today. I also just want to remind people that if you're signed up on LinkedIn, we will have your email and we'll share this with you tomorrow. The full deck, we've got actually a couple things that we didn't show during this call just for the sake of time, but you'll be able to get those. If you're watching on YouTube or you maybe forwarded this invitation or watching with a friend, the upper left-hand screen should allow you to access our Automotive Report subscription, which will make sure we have the email to blast it out to you tomorrow. And transforming industry, we've got a few pieces that we've been working on, some related to AI and other topics about how big themes are going to impact manufacturers.
So please sign up for Transforming Industry. We're looking forward to talking to everyone when we talk about software-defined vehicles. I think that's a huge avenue, and that's something that we all need to be very aware of because it's going to change the face of things, continue to change the face of things moving forward.
Yeah.
If there are any more questions, Justin, we can answer them. Otherwise, we can move on. Jay, I like your question. The new Ford EV program. I think that the way that Ford is re-envisioning manufacturing, the way that they're looking at trying to approach things differently to break out is very, very interesting. Huge opportunity there. The skunk works that they've set up, the way that they're trying to break the rules and reinvent the way that vehicles are manufacturing has potential to be a massive game changer. We're just going to have to wait and see how it's implemented and what comes out of it.
Did you answer the question about lights out factories and AI? If not, I can take that one.
I did not. You want to
Okay.
start?
Yeah, I think that's essential. I mean, the concept of a lights out factory, meaning that you're able to run without lights on, requires automation in some form. I think AI is a tough term and one that we struggled with a little bit just as we were putting together this report and discussing amongst ourselves, because I think if AI means machine learning, I think there's just different ways you express it, but it's, as Ambrose had previously said, probabilistic models. So whether that is a lot of previous automation was intensely scripted, but I think we are going to see more capabilities that have some probabilistic element. But as the MIT study that Ambrose was referencing, the challenge that a lot of enterprises have had with AI and why only 5% of these big projects were yielding returns is because for many business processes, the standard of accuracy is already much higher than what AI can provide. So we don't imagine that you're going to take a process that is operating at 99.9% uptime or reliability or higher than that and switch to what we're commonly thinking about as AI now, because that will be a decrease in quality. We're going to expect you to apply it to areas that are not at that level of accuracy. So that's why when we surveyed leaders, a lot of them talked about using meeting notes, because I think most people know meeting notes were something that were not being done or were not being done completely. So I think when you look at the gaps, think about, okay, what is something we know we should be doing, but we're not doing it consistently enough? And AI is a great way to get you 80% of the way there for most cases, but starting with some of your most robust processes and then trying to make those AI is going to be difficult to get an ROI on. Even if it seems promising and you think maybe, oh, it's an expensive process, it's probably going to be a lot more expensive to try to get these models that are constantly changing to perform at the level of some sort of deterministic or sequenced set of steps you already have.
And Justin, the other piece on that is a lot of processes aren't fully documented or fully formalized. There's a lot of tribal knowledge that's out there. And when you're trying to do AI, when you're trying to systemize things, this takes me back to my days with very early consulting days where it was business process reengineering. You have to define the process. You want to do the value stream map. You want to make sure that everything's clear and defined. then you know what you can automate and what you can't. And we need to really make sure that we're doing that appropriately and we're understanding where we are. AI is a great opportunity, just like any systems are a great opportunity to step back, look at what the business actually needs to do, question why you're doing things a certain way, and make sure you structure things and then build up accordingly so that you're doing the right things at the right time as efficiently as possible. So we like applying all of our X skills, making sure that operational excellence is there, it's pervasive, and very quickly driving forward to make sure that we're automating the right things, that we're tackling the right issues, and that we're driving value.
Yeah, I see some questions from Parth. And how significantly does the compression of tier one supplier margins impact capital expenditure, potentially leading to production delays and defective components? So one of the pieces that will be released in the full report tomorrow will include our analysis just at a high level of the financial reporting of public suppliers and OEMs with their CapEx plans. But generally, from what we see is that the compression of margins and the increased uncertainty has led to a delay of the completion of previously announced capital programs and the delay of kind of upcoming launches. So that's going to be a challenge. I think just like we saw with EVs, I think a lot of people continue to push out launches but would have optimistic timelines leading up. I think we've got a lot of optimistic launches, would you say, coming up?
I think we do. We're seeing launches continue getting delayed. Parth, I think the key for me is we've spent a tremendous amount of money on the EV transition. We've got other opportunities here. Volumes are all over the place. Releases are different from different OEMs. Tariffs are squeezing suppliers even more. And the smaller, weaker suppliers are ones that are going to continue to struggle. I think we're going to see some consolidation. We're going to see weakness. Stronger, larger tier ones will do well. And when you get to the tier 2 and tier 3, they seem to be getting tariff reimbursement from the tier ones, but it's really it's the smaller tier ones that I see as the biggest risk right now. Happy to have a further conversation with you offline about that. I'll offer you some times tomorrow. Marcus, I do. I think that getting data is absolutely key. Getting good data is hard. We developed a tool called Production Net, which we try to keep clean data. A lot of the Industry 4.0 systems disconnect the operator from the operation, and you end up with some data in there. You get downtime data in a system that just reads the machine. But if you have quality issues, it's not necessarily giving you what those quality issues were right off the bat. We need to make sure that we're looking at good, clean data as we go through. Jan, as we talked about, obviously there are great ways to use AI to do translations, to do other things. Your podcasts, getting to people on the shop floor, are absolutely amazing. I think more companies need to be looking at them because you've got to be connecting with the team on the shop floor. You have to make sure that you're engaging with them and really helping them understand how important they are, how critical they are. The guys on the shop floor are the people that create money for manufacturing companies, and we need to respect and really work with them well.
There's another one from YouTube. Are you noticing rising demand for lightweight vehicles at reasonable prices, especially as consumers resort to maintaining old vehicles amid high prices and increasing recalls? So I think my first reaction to that would be that that hasn't been the explicit strategy. I don't think it's tough to gauge the demand, other than that those vehicles tend to sell well, but there aren't really that many on the market to appropriately test if you could sell a lot more of those. I think
if we got vehicles in the sub $25,000 range, consumers would be open to them. It takes me back to my very, very early childhood and seeing all these land yachts that used to be out there, huge gas guzzlers. When the Japanese came in with these small, efficient cars, no one thought they would work. I think right now, if we had smaller, cheaper cars, it will be very interesting. I think the $25,000 slate will be very interesting to see what happens there. That's a great potential. Just like the Maverick has sold well, people are looking for more affordable options. One more question we'll take, and then we'll move on from Thomas. How much of the tariffs can be offset by operational or business excellence? I think this is where footprint strategy and supply chain strategy, executing those very well, come into play. Part of operational excellence in my mind is being in the right region, being in the right place. We've seen a lot of different operating models, a lot of centers of excellence, a lot of low-cost country strategies. Low-cost country strategies aren't working now. They started to fail during COVID. Tariffs are putting a bright point on them. The companies that we're seeing who are moving operations, including going to smaller plants where they are building in multiple regions, seem to be doing better. There's a huge opportunity to capitalize on relocating to different markets and making things work better. So you can't, with just general fixing the operation, you can get a point or two here and there, but you're not going to offset a 25% or a 50% or 100% tariff. You really have to think differently. You have to look at realigning your supply chain. You have to look at being in the right place, and you have to think about where your manufacturing plants are. So thanks to everyone for joining us. Really appreciate your time. Feel free to reach out. My email's in the slide deck. Justin's is as well. We're always happy to have a conversation and answer questions. Have a great day.
Thank you. We'll email us